Tonight, a routine autopsy was about to begin at the morgue, but when the doctor saw that the blood type and the mark on the wrist matched his own, his world fell apart. Because this woman was actually his sister, who had been declared dead years ago. Soon, 40 years of hospital records will be opened, an unimaginable baby trafficking scheme will be exposed, and a child's life will change. Before it begins, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and write in the comments how you would reveal such a secret if you were in their shoes. It was dawn in Texas, one of those mornings when the wind cuts through your skin and the silence weighs like lead. The hospital was almost empty, only the distant sound of a heart monitor breaking the still air. Dr. Gabriel Ortega pushed the metal door open with his shoulder, and the creak echoed down the hallway. A chill ran down his spine. The air inside was too cold, even for him, who had spent many nights like this. Although she was so young, on the steel table lay a body covered with a sheet. The file on the tray, female, unknown, approximately 25 years old. No name, no history, no one to ask about her. Gabriel took a deep breath, trying to shake off the weight he always felt before starting an autopsy. But that night, for some reason, it was different. There was something in the air. "Let's go," he muttered to himself, pulling his mask over his face. The smell of disinfectant was strong, mixed with the cold of the steel, and the soft sound of the wall clock created a strange, almost sacred feeling. He put on his gloves. The sound of the latex was too loud in that silence. When he lifted the sheet to the woman's chest, he felt a lump in his throat. Her face was calm, young, dark hair, fair skin, simple features, but there was something familiar about her. For a moment he stood still, just looking. He didn't know if it was fatigue or if her face resembled someone he had seen before. Nurse Lupita opened the door slowly. "Doctor, I brought you some coffee." Gabriel looked up distractedly. "Yes, thank you, Lupita. You look worried today." She sensed it and left, leaving the sound of the door closing behind her. The echo squeezed his chest. He picked up the tape recorder and spoke in a somewhat hoarse voice. "Case number 1742, female, approximately 25 years old. Autopsy begins at 2:43 a.m. The sound of his own voice on the tape recorder made him feel small, as if he were narrating the life of someone the world had already forgotten. The lights reflected off the metal. His hands were steady, but his heart was heavy. He looked at her face again. She seemed to be asleep, so young, so alone. "I'm sorry," he whispered softly, almost without meaning to. "I just want to understand what happened to you." The clock struck 3 in the morning. Outside, the wind blew against the hospital windows. Inside the room, there was only the sound of metal and the restrained breathing of a man trying to do the right thing without letting his heart get in the way. The sound of blood falling into the tubes was the only noise in the room. The cold was still biting, and Gabriel's breath formed small clouds in the air. He watched the drops falling slowly, red, too vivid to come from someone who was no longer breathing. He took the vial and placed it in the typing machine. The digital screen flickered slowly, the numbers rising, the beep marking the rhythm. Gabriel rested his hands on the table, tired, thinking it would be just another body, another test, another early morning. But the body, that woman, still unsettled him. The screen beeped. He looked without haste until he read the cold letters on the screen. O negative. For a second, time seemed to stand still. The same type as him, rare. Almost no one has it. His heart skipped a beat. He whispered, frowning, "What a coincidence." But his voice sounded weak, as if even he didn't believe it. He took the woman's file and checked it again, as if the paper could correct the machine. But there it was, printed in black ink, blood type O, negative. Gabriel's throat went dry. He took a deep breath, trying to concentrate on his work. He had seen coincidences before, yes, but this one struck him in a strange way, as if something inside him recognized something in her. He placed his fingers on the edge of the table. The cold steel brought him back to the present. He tried to push the thought away, but his chest remained tight, as if his body were telling him that it wasn't just a coincidence. As he cleaned the instruments, his gaze fell on the woman's ankle. A slight mark on her skin caught his attention. He moved closer, pulled the sheet back a little more, and froze there. Right on her right ankle was a crescent-shaped scar, the same shape, the same place. His vision clouded for a moment. He touched the mark gently with his glove. It was identical to the scar he had had since childhood. The same curve, the same fine cut that he had always thought was from a silly accident. The sound of the clock grew louder. His heart was beating fast, hard. It almost hurt. "This can't be," he muttered, taking a step back. Nurse Lupita opened the door at that moment, unaware of what was happening. "Doctor, the coffee." He raised his hand quickly. "After Lupita, please." She looked at him strangely but left silently. Gabriel stayed there looking at that scar. His hands began to sweat even though it was cold. "It's the same," he said softly, almost without a voice. In the same place, inside, he felt something moving, a mixture of fear and curiosity, as if he were looking at a broken mirror. He tried to convince himself that it was a coincidence, that the world was full of similar stories. But at that moment, every part of him screamed that something was very wrong. The nameless woman, the strange blood, the same scar, 3 details, 3 small coincidences, but no explanation. Gabriel placed both hands on the table, closed his eyes, and stood there quietly, listening to the sound of his own breathing and, without knowing why, a tear ran down under his mask. The silence in the room felt heavier now. Gabriel could hear the sound of his own slow heart beating to the rhythm of the lights flickering on the ceiling. He took a deep breath, trying to calm down, but his head was still filled with the image of that identical scar. He grabbed the board with the notes and tried to concentrate on what he had written, but his eyes kept returning to the woman's body. Every detail of her called to him. A strange impulse made him look at her hands. The right one was slightly closed, as if she had been holding something until the last second. Gabriel approached, touched her fingers carefully, and began to open her hand little by little. The skin was cold, the fingers hard. A chill ran up his arm when the palm opened completely. He saw a simple necklace, worn by time, the thin chain tangled between her fingers, and in the center, half of a metal heart. Gabriel picked it up carefully, almost afraid of breaking it. The metal was cold, but it weighed in a way that was not only physical, it seemed to carry an entire story. "What were you hiding here, huh?" he muttered softly, not realizing he was speaking aloud. He turned the heart in his hand. The edges were scratched, and in the center were some very small, almost erased letters. He narrowed his eyes, trying to read it. He could only see the beginning of something, perhaps a name, perhaps a date. Time had erased the rest. "Damn," he whispered in frustration. But the more he looked at that piece of metal, the more he felt something different, a knot in his chest, a strange warmth rising through his body. It was just a broken necklace, and yet it felt like he couldn't breathe. He held the pendant up to the light. Half of it had a small slot on the side, as if it was waiting for the other part to fit together, an incomplete heart. For a moment, Gabriel stood still, looking at that broken heart, and thought about how many people in the world kept halves of things, halves of promises, halves of lives. A soft sound brought him out of his trance, the charm bumping against the metal of the tray. He grabbed it again quickly, almost afraid it would disappear. He put the necklace in his robe pocket, not quite sure why. He just felt he needed to have it close by. Lupita appeared at the door, uncertain. "Doctor, is everything okay?" He took a deep breath, trying to appear calm. Yes, everything's fine," but his voice came out shaky, different. "Did you find something strange?" she insisted, noticing his behavior. He shook his head. "No, nothing important," he lied. Lupita sensed it but stayed a second longer, looking at him as if she felt something was wrong before leaving. As soon as she was gone, Gabriel looked back at the body. The woman was still there, serene, as if she were asleep, but now she had a story, or at least a secret. The necklace weighed heavily in his pocket. The sound of metal rubbing against the fabric seemed to beat in time with his heart. He ran his hand slowly over his pocket and thought aloud, "If you had half, who has the other half?" The air in the room grew even colder, and for the first time in years, Gabriel was afraid of the silence. Lupita approached with slow steps. Her gown was wrinkled, her face tired. The night had already been too long, and Dr. Ortega's gaze made her even more tense. She approached, holding a clipboard with notes against her chest. "Doctor, I want to clean the girl's hair," she asked in a low voice, almost a whisper, respecting the silence that dominated the mortuary. Gabriel did not respond immediately. He continued to stare at the white sheet, his thoughts lost in everything he had seen up to that moment. In the end, he only nodded. Lupita put on gloves and carefully brushed the woman's dark hair aside. Her hair still smelled of cheap supermarket shampoo mixed with the disinfectant in the room. The contrast was heartbreaking. "So sad, so young," Lupita murmured, gently moving the hair. Gabriel turned his face away for a moment. "No one came for her," he said quietly. "Not a single call." The silence after that was heavy. All she could hear was the faint sound of plastic rubbing against her hands as she combed the hair. Lupita noticed something caught near the nape of the neck, a simple beige plastic hair clip, slightly broken. She tried to loosen it, but the clip was too tight. She turned it carefully until she heard a small click, and that's when she saw something inside. "Doctor, look at this," she called out, confused, holding up the clip. Gabriel approached. "What is it?" She pointed to the small space that had opened up inside. Carefully folded inside was a tiny piece of paper, almost the size of a fingernail. Lupita took it out with tweezers, afraid of breaking it. The paper was yellowed and damp around the edges. She opened it calmly, unfolding it bit by bit. The shaky letters written in blue pen were still legible with some effort. "If anything happens to me, protect Matteo." Lupita froze. She looked at the doctor with wide eyes. "Doctor, who is Matteo?" Gabriel took the paper from her hands. The paper was shaking, but it was he who was trembling. He read and reread those words, as if trying to understand a code that made no sense. "Protect Matteo," he repeated in a low voice. "Who could it be?" No one answered. The air grew colder. The lamp above them flickered for a moment. Lupita crossed her arms, trying to hide the chill. "Maybe a son," she said, doubtfully. Gabriel kept staring at the paper. Or a brother, or someone she loved very much. The name Matteo kept echoing inside him, as if it had weight. He sealed the letter at the end of the sentence once more. Just that, an initial. He folded the paper carefully, almost lovingly, and put it inside a transparent bag, but his gaze did not stray from the words. "If anything happens to me," it sounded like a farewell, like fear, like someone who knew something bad was going to happen. Lupita tried to change the tone, to break the heavy atmosphere. "Doctor, maybe it doesn't matter." But he interrupted her with a serious, firm look that she almost never saw in him. "Everything matters, Lupita." She looked down, without saying anything else. For a few seconds, the two of them remained there alone in front of a body that held more questions than answers. Rare blood, a similar scar, a broken necklace, and now a name written on a piece of paper hidden inside a hair clip. Gabriel took a deep breath and ran his fingers over the pocket of his gown, feeling the necklace inside. Then he looked back at the piece of paper. Matteo murmured. Gabriel sat for a long time in the cold room, staring at the floor, the piece of paper, the necklace, the blood, the scar. Everything was spinning around in his head like a whirlwind. He felt like he was in one of those nightmares where you want to wake up but your body won't respond. His hand was shaking. He took his cell phone out of his robe pocket and stared at the screen for a few seconds before pressing the green button. The name Mom appeared. He took a deep breath. The phone rang twice until Elena's tired voice answered. "Son, it's late. Did something happen?" The sound of his mother's voice tightened his chest. It was the same sweet voice as always, but now it sounded distant, fragile. "Mom." He swallowed hard, his throat tight. "I need to talk to you. It's important." "What's going on, Gabriel? Speak slowly. Your voice sounds strange." She was silent for a few seconds, her gaze lost on the body covered on the table. "Today, I got a case. A young woman with no name." His voice faltered. "Mom, there are strange things on the other side." She sighed. "Strange?" She closed her eyes. "She has the same blood type as me, O negative, just like me, and a scar on her ankle right in the same place as mine and yours." Silence. No sound, not even breathing. Mom, on the other side, heard a trembling sigh. "Gabriel," her voice low, almost a whisper. Son, please don't say that. He sat up straight in his chair, feeling his heart beat faster. Why? What's wrong? It's nothing, my love. Sometimes fate plays games with us. Mom, don't talk to me like that. I'm asking you a serious question. Her voice was firm, but fearful. Same scar, same blood that can happen. Can someone have the same DNA as me again? Silence, a long, heavy silence, until she heard a stifled sob. Are you crying? Elena tried to hide it, but her voice came out broken. Son, there's something I never told you. Gabriel felt his whole body grow cold, the sound of his heart pounding in his head. What do you mean, something? What is it, Mom? She took a deep breath, trying to calm her crying. Not over the phone, please. Can you come home now? I need to look you in the eyes to tell you. Mom, tell me now. I'm shaking here. Her voice came out almost like a plea. No, son, come home. I'll wait for you. And she hung up. Gabriel stood still with the cell phone in his hand, staring into space. His mother's words echoed in his head. There's something I never told you. His chest hurt. His legs felt heavy. He put the phone in his pocket, took off his gloves, and left the room silently. The hospital hallway was almost empty, with cold lights and the echo of his footsteps sounding very loud. Each step to the parking lot seemed longer. The early morning wind hit his face, but he didn't even feel it. Inside him, there was only confusion, fear, and a question that hurt like an open wound. What has my mother been hiding from me all these years? The clock read almost 4 a.m. when he knocked on his mother's door. The light was already on. She must have been waiting for him. Elena opened the door slowly, her gray hair pulled back, her eyes red. She said nothing, just motioned for him to come in. They sat down at the kitchen table. Neither spoke for a few seconds until she sighed, resting her trembling hands on the table. Son, you were born with a twin sister. The words hung in the air. Gabriel felt as if the ground had disappeared. What? Her voice was barely a whisper. Elena began to cry. They told me she died. Gabriel, during childbirth. I asked to see her, to touch her, but they wouldn't let me. They just said it was better that way. He ran his hand over his face, trying to understand. But Mom, why didn't you ever tell me? I couldn't, son. At that time they threatened me. They said it was better to forget, that the body would go straight into the coffin. Her voice broke. But I swear by everything I saw her breathe for just a second. Gabriel was breathless. I always thought they had taken my daughter. Her tears fell uncontrollably, but over time I convinced myself it was just me. I tried to move on, son, I tried. She got up slowly, her eyes full of tears. So she did breathe, Mom. Elena interrupted him, crying loudly now, as if she had kept it inside her life. I don't know, Gabriel. I never knew. But if that woman has your blood, your scar. She brought her hand to her chest, trembling. Maybe I didn't go crazy that day. The sound of her crying filled the kitchen. Gabriel approached, knelt beside her, and hugged her tightly. They stayed like that for a while, two broken bodies trying to piece together a story that should never have been hidden. When Elena rested her head on her son's shoulder, she whispered, I always knew that one day the past would knock on our door. He replied, his voice almost without strength. Now, Mom, what do we do with this? But she didn't answer. She just cried, silently. The clock read 5 a.m., and there, between tears and secrets, an entire life began to change. The sun had barely risen when Gabriel left the house. His head hurt. His body felt heavy, as if he hadn't slept in days. His mother's words kept repeating themselves uninterrupted. You were born with a twin sister. He drove slowly through the empty streets of Texas. The cold wind blew in through the half-open window, bringing with it the smell of the morning, but inside the car, there was only silence. His hand sweated as he gripped the steering wheel tightly. His heart was still beating fast and uncontrollably. His mother had given him a name before she left. Doña Pilar, the midwife who had helped with the birth, was the only person alive from that time who could perhaps confirm the story. Her house was in an old neighborhood near the Central Market, a simple house with worn walls and dried flowers in the windows. Gabriel parked and stood for a moment looking at the rusty gate. He took a deep breath, trying to prepare himself. He knocked softly. It took a while before a hoarse voice answered from inside. I'm coming! I'm coming! The door creaked open, and a woman appeared, with completely white hair, a small, stooped body with a colorful shawl over her shoulders. Despite her age, her eyes still sparkled. "Doña Pilar?" Gabriel asked, removing his hat as a sign of respect. She looked him up and down, taking a moment. "Yes, it's me. And you are?" She took a deep breath. "I'm Gabriel Ortega, doctor at the El Paso County General Hospital." Her eyes widened, and she put her hand to her chest. Ortega repeated in a trembling voice, "Elena is your mother, right?" Gabriela felt surprised. "Did you met the old midwife?" She motioned for him to come in. "Come in, my son. Come in. The air is cold out here." The house was full of old portraits, saints on the walls, and the smell of strong coffee. Doña Pilar walked slowly, her sandals dragging on the floor. They sat down at the kitchen table. She looked at him for a long time, as if studying his face, every feature, every line, and then in a low voice she said, "I saw you being born, my son. I saw too." Gabriel opened his eyes wide. She felt tears welling up. "Two. A boy and a girl. It was early morning. I remember it as if it were today. Your mother was screaming, and the doctor said there was only one coming, but I saw when the two were born." Gabriel rested his hands on the table, his heart racing. "What happened? I didn't understand at the time," she continued. "The girl cried, but then two men dressed in white came and took the baby away. They said he didn't make it. I screamed and protested, but they told me to be quiet. They said the hospital would take care of it." She paused, swallowing her tears. "Elena cried so much, son, so much. I never forgot that sound." Gabriel closed his eyes, trying not to cry. "Are you sure you saw two?" He got up with effort, leaning on the chair. He walked to an old, worn wooden cabinet, opened it slowly, and took out a shoebox full of old envelopes and yellowed papers. She searched through them until she found something wrapped in a cloth. "I kept this," she said, her hands trembling. Inside the cloth was an old, somewhat faded photo showing a younger Doña Pilar in an apron, carrying two newborns wrapped in different blankets. Their faces were tiny, but you could see they were the same, identical. Gabriel put his hand to his mouth, his eyes filling with tears, staring at that image. "My God," whispered Doña Pilar. She sat back down and took another small object out of the box. It was a delicate chain with half a heart hanging from it. "The hospital gave it to me to keep, one for each baby. They said it was a memento for the mother, but they only gave you yours. I kept the other one." Gabriel took the necklace out of his robe pocket, the same one he had found in the hand of the nameless woman. The two pieces fit together perfectly, forming a whole heart without any cracks. Her hands were shaking. The air seemed to disappear. The midwife looked at him fondly and said softly, "You were born together, my son. You were two pieces of the same heart." Gabriel couldn't answer. He just sat there with the complete necklace in his hands, feeling the weight of it all. Time seemed to have stopped. Doña Pilar put her hand on his. "God brought you here for a reason." He looked up with tears falling. His voice came out broken, almost a whisper. "So she did exist," the old woman felt slowly. "She always existed, son. They just hid it from you." And there, in that simple kitchen, amid the smell of coffee and old memories, Gabriel felt his heart break between pain and relief. The old clock on the wall ticked slowly, as if each second weighed more than the last. Gabriel remained seated at the table, holding the complete necklace between his fingers, trying to understand everything, his whole heart now broken only in time. Doña Pilar looked at him tenderly, but also with the face of someone who still had something else to say. "My son," she said, moving the rag on her lap, "there is one more thing I need to show you." She slowly got up, her body bent over by the years, and walked to the same old cupboard. She opened the bottom part where there was a drawer that seemed almost stuck. She pushed it with both hands until it creaked. The smell of old paper filled the air. Inside was a worn brown notebook with edges bitten by time. She picked it up carefully, as if holding a piece of history. "I've kept this notebook since that day," she said in a low voice. "It's my birth book. Here I wrote down every baby I helped deliver, names of the mothers, dates, weight, time." She ran her wrinkled fingers over the yellowed pages, one by one, until she stopped at a specific point. Her gaze changed, becoming serious and tense. "Look at this, my son." She pushed the notebook toward him. "Here is the record of your births." Gabriel pulled the notebook carefully toward him. The old handwriting trembled in blue ink. He read aloud, almost breathlessly. "Elena Ortega, twin birth, March 6, 1983. Baby a male baby. Female." The midwife's pen had crossed out the word female with a thin line, and next to it, written in smaller letters, they said she died. They didn't show the body. He felt a lump in his throat. His finger traced the words as if they were open wounds. "Everything is here," he murmured, swallowing hard. "Everything they erased." Doña Pilar nodded slowly. "I tried to warn her to your mother, my son, but in those days no one listened to a midwife." Gabriel turned the page, and that's when he saw something written a little further down in another ink, almost erased. A small scribble that seemed out of place. "What is this?" he asked, pointing. Doña Pilar narrowed her eyes to see better. "I wrote that many years later. The handwriting was shaky, but it was still legible. Camila Ortega, possible name given to the girl, was seen with the nurse. Maria Estela." The name hung in the air. Camila Ortega. Gabriel read it again slowly, as if testing how it sounded. It came out heavy but familiar, as if that name had always been inside him, waiting to be remembered. "Camila," he repeated, almost without a voice. She had a name. Doña Pilar took a deep breath. "Yes, my son. I found out years later from a girl who worked at the same hospital. She told me that a nurse had been disappearing with newborns born to poor families, saying they had died, but in reality they were selling the babies, or giving them up for adoption outside the city." Gabriel remained still, his hands clutching the notebook as if the paper were going to escape. "So it was her?" he asked, his voice breaking. "That nurse, Doña Pilaras?" She felt slow. "I don't know how much of it is true, son. I only know that I heard that name many times. Maria Estela G. She was the one on duty that night." Silence filled the room. Gabriel stared at the name Camila Ortega, as if the letters were shining on the paper. "I lived my whole life believing I was an only child," he murmured, "and her name was here all along." Tears began to fall without him trying to hide them. Doña Pilar reached out and touched his shoulder. "She had the same blood, the same face, the same beginning as you, and someone decided to take that away from them." Gabriel closed the notebook carefully, almost respectfully. No one should erase a life like that. Doña Pilaras felt a stubborn tear running down her cheek. "That's why I kept it, my son. I knew that someday someone would come looking for what was missing." He got up slowly, the notebook pressed to his chest. He looked at the old midwife and said in a broken voice, "You kept the proof that she existed." She smiled sadly. "I kept it because every child who comes into the world deserves to be remembered, even those who try to erase them." The morning sun began to stream through the window, illuminating the table, the open notebook, and the intact necklace on the wood. Gabriel stood there, staring at the handwritten name, Camila Ortega. It was just ink on old paper, but to him it was as if the name had come back to life, and with it everything that time had tried to bury. The blood, the love, and half a heart that was now beating again. The hospital was already silent when Gabriel returned. Dawn was giving way to a pale morning, and exhaustion seemed to weigh on every step he took through the cold corridors. Doña Pilar's words still echoed in his head. The name, the photo, the necklace. He felt his heart beating at a different rhythm, between guilt and discovery. As he entered the black room, the cold air enveloped him. There was Lupita, leaning on the metal table, her gaze tired and curious. "Doctor," she began, holding something in her hands. "I found this." Gabriel approached her gloves. It was a broken cell phone with the screen shattered into 1,000 pieces, as if it had fallen from a great height. "It was inside the woman's bag," she explained. "It had no battery." Gabriel picked up the device carefully. The feeling of holding it in his hands was strange. It was a piece of her life, the last object that still held some voice, some memory. He looked at Lupita. "You can try to turn it on." She felt it and went to the instrument cart, took an improvised cable, connected it to the power source, and then to the cell phone. There was a click, and the small device flickered with a faint light. The sound of it turning on was almost inaudible. "It's turning on," Lupita said in a low voice, as if she didn't want to break the moment. The screen turned black for a few seconds, a black background with cracks crossing like cobwebs. The number 1 appeared. Voice message. Lupita looked at it hesitantly. "Let's listen to it," Gabriel said. He took a long time to respond, ran his hand over his face, took a deep breath. "Yes." She pressed the button. The sound that came out was low, with static, but human. A difficult, drawn-out breath. Then a tired woman's voice broken by crying. "Brother," the word came out low, almost a whisper. "If I find you, for Matteo, forgive me." And the audio ended. The silence that followed seemed heavy. Neither of them moved. Lupita was the first to speak, her voice trembling. "Brother," she said. Gabriel didn't respond. His face was pale, his eyes filled with tears. His voice, that breath, there was something that transcended time. "Blood, the heart, take care of Matteo," he repeated slowly, as if trying to understand the hidden meaning. "Who is Matteo?" Lupita shrugged, her eyes filled with tears. "I don't know, but it sounded like a farewell." Gabriel ran his hand through his hair nervously. The cell phone turned off again, dead forever. He stared at the black screen as if he wanted to bring it back, as if that voice could answer the questions that were growing inside him. "Forgive me," he murmured, almost to himself. Why ask for forgiveness? No one answered. The sound of the clock on the wall marked the slow seconds. Lupita approached, touching his shoulder gently. "Doctor, do you think she was talking to you?" He looked up, his eyes red. "I don't know," but her voice failed me. But I felt that she was. The silence returned, heavy, full of things that cannot be put into words. Lupita unplugged the cord, putting the cell phone in a clear bag, but Gabriel took it out again, clutching it tightly, as if it were something sacred. "Let me him. This is all she left," he said softly. The nurse just nodded, respecting the moment. Gabriel stood there alone with the cell phone in his hands. The cold, lifeless device seemed to beat. Her last words echoed in his head, repeating themselves over and over. "Brother, if I find you, take care of Matteo. Forgive me." Her voice trembled, but it was sweet, filled with something he recognized without understanding the name. Matteo began to beat his chest like a prayer. Who was this child? And why had she, his long-lost sister, entrusted him with this last request? Tears fell silently because, even though he didn't know who Matteo was, Gabriel already felt that he had promised something he couldn't ignore. Camilla's body had already been taken away, but Gabriel couldn't leave the room. The broken cell phone was on the table, and her last words echoed in his head like an open wound. "Brother, if I find you, take care of Matteo." He ran his hands over his face, trying to calm down. He needed to understand who this child was. Every detail mattered now. He took a deep breath, put his gloves back on, and returned to the table where the woman's belongings were. Her torn robe still had dried bloodstains and a faint smell of paint, which was strange for someone who wasn't a painter. As he examined the fabric, a small glint caught his attention. In the inside pocket of the shirt, there was a green paint stain in circles, as if something had spilled there. He rubbed the fabric carefully, looking at the color. It was the kind of paint used in schools, in brushes for whiteboards. "Green paint," he muttered thoughtfully. Aha! What was he doing with this? He continued searching the pocket and found a small crumpled piece of paper, almost torn in half. He opened it carefully. It was a school lunch ticket, the kind given out in public schools. At the top, the name of the school, Benito Juarez Elementary School. Gabriel's heart raced. He looked at the paper again as if he could get more answers from it. The serial number was recent. On the back, a quick, half-faded note. Entrance 7:30, Matteo. The name pierced him like a knife. He clutched the ticket in his hand and whispered to himself, "Matteo." She was talking about a child. He left the room with determination, each step echoing in the hospital hallway of the hospital like a blow. He took the car and drove through the streets of Texas with the ticket open on the dashboard. The address Tente led him to a simple neighborhood full of colorful houses with peeling walls. The blue gate of the school was ajar, and the courtyard was empty. Some children were running. Others were waiting in line at the cooperative. The sound of voices mixed with children's laughter tightened his chest. He walked toward the address and knocked on the door. A middle-aged woman with her hair pulled back and thick glasses looked up. "Good morning. How can I help you?" she asked with a friendly smile. "Yes, I'm Dr. Ortega. I'm looking for information about a woman who came here. Her name was Camila Ortega." The woman froze. The smile disappeared suddenly. She looked around as if to check that no one was listening. "Camila," she repeated in a low voice. "Yes, of course. She came here sometimes. She had a child," Gabriel interrupted, his heart beating faster. The woman took a deep breath, her gaze restless. "Doctor, why are you asking? Please, ma'am, I need to know." She slowly closed the door and locked it, the gesture quick and nervous. Then she approached and spoke almost in a whisper. "Camila brought a child. His name was Mateo. He was about 6, maybe 7 years old. He was quiet, a good boy. She would leave him here and say she was working at night." Gabriel felt his whole body shudder. Mateo repeated it, as if confirming something his heart already knew. The woman looked at him, and her eyes filled with tears. But yesterday, her voice broke. "Yesterday, 2 men came." Gabriel sat up straight. "What men?" She swallowed hard, fear on her face. "They weren't from the government. They said they were family, but the boy screamed that he didn't want to go. I tried to stop them, but they showed a piece of paper, a fake order, and took him away." The ground seemed to disappear beneath Gabriel's feet. "What do you mean they took him away?" "They took him away, doctor. No one else came back." He rested his hands on the table, trying to bear the weight he felt inside. The name Mateo now had a face, a small child taken away by force. The woman's voice mingled with the distant sound of children playing outside, as if the world continued regardless of the pain exploding inside him. She continued in a trembling voice, "I already spoke to the police, but no one is doing anything. They say that without family they can't lift a finger." Gabriel clenched the school ticket in his fist so tightly that he almost broke it. "It can't be," he muttered, almost to himself. "Not again." The face of Lucia, his friend from college, came to mind. The same look of fear, the same kind of injustice he couldn't stop 10 years ago. That memory hurt. There would be an old wound. He took a deep breath, staring at the principal. "Tell me, ma'am, where did they take the child?" She looked down, her hands trembling. "I don't know. They just said they were taking him south, but they didn't say where." Gabriel was silent for a few seconds, then put the ticket in his pocket. He looked at the playground full of children and said in a voice that mixed pain and anger, "I'm not going to let him disappear too." The woman nodded with tears in her eyes. "Camila talked a lot about you. She said that if anything happened to her, you would know what to do." Gabriel stood still, his words pounding in his chest. Slowly, he turned his face and looked at the gray sky above the school gate and murmured, "Don't worry, Camila. I'm going to find Mateo." And for the first time, the doctor who had spent his life opening bodies to understand. Death felt that now he had to race against it. The sun was already beginning to set when Gabriel returned to the hospital, his body tired, his heart heavy, his head full of questions. Camila, Mateo, the necklace, the blood, everything was a web of secrets. And now the fear was that it was too late to save that child. Lupita was in the records room writing reports. When she saw him enter, she immediately noticed that something was wrong. His eyes were sunken, his face serious, like someone carrying more than just work. "Doctor, did you find something?" she asked. He quickly got up and put the school ticket on the table. "Mateo, there is a child. Lupita left him at a public school." She covered her mouth in surprise. So he was her son. Gabriel did not respond. He remained silent, staring at the floor. "2 men took him away yesterday." Lupita's eyes widened. "Who is he?" She shook her head. "I don't know, but I'm going to find him." She took a deep breath, and as if remembering something, went to her bag and took out a USB drive. "Doctor, this is from the cameras. The hospital cameras recorded when they brought the woman's body. Maybe there's something else." Gabriela felt them turn on the computer, connect the USB, and the screen began to show black and white images. The clock on the recording showed the previous dawn. First, the body being brought in on a stretcher covered with a sheet. Then 2 paramedics talking in a corner, waving their hands nervously, and then a figure in the background, almost blurred. A man standing near the ambulance looking towards the hospital, as if waiting for something. "Wait," said Gabriel, approaching the screen. "Zoom in on that." Lupita zoomed in, and the image became blurred, but clear enough to see his face. He had a deep scar on his left cheek that reached the corner of his mouth, small, hard eyes, and a crooked smile. Lupita let out a sigh of fear. "My God." Gabriel looked at her. She seemed nervous, her voice trembling. "He's a dangerous guy. I know him from the neighborhood where my cousin lives. He gets involved in strange things, rents warehouses, dirty favors. Nobody messes with him." Gabriel frowned. "Where can I find him?" "He has several warehouses in the Libertad market," she replied, lowering her voice as if just saying the name would bring bad luck. "He lives there. He does his things there." The doctor stared at the screen without moving. The scar seemed to look at him. The name El Rulo weighed heavily like a sign. Lupita approached, trying to guess what he was thinking. "Doctor, you can't go alone. That man is dangerous." "Seriously, I don't care," he replied, without taking his eyes off the image. "If that guy had something to do with Camila or the child, I have to see it with my own eyes." She took him by the arm. "Doctor, please, you don't know who you might run into." Gabriel turned slowly, and the look in his eyes made Lupita let go of his arm. It was something different. It wasn't anger. It was pain, urgent pain. "All my life I've looked for explanations," Lupita said quietly. "You feel it, but this time I don't want to understand. I just want to find him." Lupita stood still, not knowing what to say. The screen continued to show the face of the man standing in the shadow of the ambulance like a ghost of flesh and blood. She pressed her lips together, thought for a second, and then whispered, "Doctor, can I call someone? I know Commander Herrera. He knows how to get around there." Gabriel nodded slowly, still seeing the scar on the screen. "Do it, but quickly." The air in the room became heavy, as if the hospital itself were holding its breath. The light flickered on the image. The man with the scar was still standing, looking at the hospital entrance, and for a moment he seemed to smile. Lupita crossed her arms uneasily. That man always appears when something bad is about to happen. Gabriel turned off the monitor, picked up the USB drive, and put it in his pocket. "Let's see what he wants now," he said, and left the room without looking back. Lupita stood there with a heavy heart, looked again at the blank screen, and whispered like a prayer, "God protect that child." Meanwhile, in Gabriel's pocket, the memory stick with the image of the scar weighed heavily, and inside his mind, a single question pounded in time with his heartbeat. Where is Mateo? The Libertad market was about to close when Gabriel entered. The yellow lights in the aisles flickered, the floor smelled of soap mixed with old grease, and the few people still walking around spoke softly, as if afraid of awakening something sleeping in the shadows. His heart was beating in his neck. Every stall seemed to hide a part of the story he didn't yet know. "Doctor," a thin voice called to him near a stall selling bracelets, combs, and mirrors. "Come quickly, please." It was a short saleswoman with a flowered scarf on her head and nervous hands. Her eyes darted from side to side, watching the aisles. Gabriel approached slowly. "My name is Rosa," she said, almost in a whisper. "Are you the doctor who's been asking about the girl they called Camila?" The name hit him hard in the chest. "Yes, what do you know, Rosa?" She bit her lip, took a small box from under the table, opened it, and took out a plastic bag. Inside was a scratched, half-dirty hospital bracelet with black letters, "Camila Ortega." Gabriel held his breath. His fingertips tingled. He touched the bracelet with the care of someone touching something alive. "Where did you get this?" His voice came out low but firm. Rosa looked over her shoulder and moved closer, so close that he could smell the cheap soap mixed with fear. "They left it here for me. A boy said that if a nosy doctor came, I should give him this." "A boy? What was he like?" Gabriel tried to stay calm, but anxiety trembled in his voice. Skinny, black sweatshirt, looking at the floor. He didn't talk much, just said that he should hurry if he saw you, and swallowed hard, telling him not to follow him. Gabriel opened the bag with trembling fingers. The bracelet was from the hospital where he worked. He ran his thumb over the name Camila. The world seemed to shrink until it became a tiny pink dot. He took another piece of paper out of the box, a folded note with the edge stained with empanada grease. He gave it to him. He opened it. 2 lines written in today. 2300, shed 12, come alone. Gabriel's stomach churned. The air suddenly became heavy. The word alone beat like a warning in letters of fire. This smells like a trap, Rosa whispered, hugging herself here. Everyone knows that shed 12 is for complicated people. The silence between them was broken by the bang of a gate in the distance. Gabriel read the note 2-3 times. 23. He looked at his watch. There were still hours to go, but time was slipping through his fingers. Who asked you to give me this? He insisted. A boy, she said. He didn't tell me his name, but Rosa took a deep breath, like someone who has decided to jump. When he gave me the bag, I saw something else. A child's notebook with a drawing in green ink, a round face, and a misspelled name underneath. Mateo. The noise of the market disappeared. Gabriel felt his body light and heavy at the same time. Are you sure about what you saw? He asked in a raspy voice. Absolutely certain. She closed her eyes tightly, holding back the tears. Doctor, I have children. That handwriting was a child's, and the ink was the same as they use in elementary school. Back here, the smell of deception grew stronger, as if it had a shape, as if it were there with them, listening to everything. Gabriel closed his hand over the note. The paper crumpled. His thoughts raced to where it hurt the most. Hurt Mateo. What else did they tell you? Anything about the child? The urgency exploded. It's okay. They've seen him. Rosa shook her head in distress. I don't know. I just know that if you go, be careful. That shed. She looked around again, almost breathless. It's theirs. He understood without her saying the name. The scarred face returned like a blow. Thank you, Rosa. He put the bracelet and the note in the inside pocket of his coat. His hand lingered there for a second longer there, as if she wanted to protect those 2 objects with her body. Doctor? She grabbed his arm with unexpected force. Don't go alone. Really, it's not a game. If they go after the child, they won't let him go easily. Gabriel swallowed the lump in his throat. His eyes burned. I can't leave him. He paused as if talking to someone who was no longer there. Camilla asked me to do this. Rosa felt fear in her eyes. Then promise me you'll come back. People go into that shed and never come out. A cleaning cart squeaked by, the lamp above them shaking, casting shadows on Gabriel's face. He took a deep breath, like someone who jumps without knowing the depth. What time do the market gates close? He asked. 10:30. After that, it gets dark. Only those who fell behind remain. There was no need to finish. 8 hours. Warehouse 12. Come alone, he repeated in his head, feeling each word cut him inside. The note burned in his pocket. The bracelet scraped against the fabric as if urging him to hurry. If you see the boy again, he said, walking away, tell him that the doctor heard that he's going. Dr. Rosa called him once more. When he turned around, she held out something small, a simple metal crucifix. Take it. It doesn't work miracles, but it keeps you company. He took it. The metal was cold. Thank you. He walked through the market aisles with steady steps, but inside, he was trembling. The doors closed, the voices faded, and the night outside opened its mouth. Where is Mateo? The question came and went without rest, beating along with his heart. In the parking lot, the wind cut his face. Gabriel leaned on the car, closed his eyes for a moment, and spoke softly, as if making a deal with someone he loved who was no longer there. Camila, I'm going, but if I fall, hold my hand. From a distance, he opened his eyes. The clock read a little past 8 p.m. There was still time until 11 p.m. Too much time to invent fears. Too little time to learn to breathe. He got into the car with the note and the bracelet on his chest, as if they were documents of life. He turned the key, and the engine responded. The glass fogged up with his hot breath, and he let it fog up. Sometimes it's better to see less outside, when what matters screams inside. Going to Warehouse 12 alone smelled like a trap, and in the midst of that smell, a man who wouldn't let him sleep. Mateo. The clock on the dashboard read 10:47 p.m. when Gabriel parked the car 2 blocks from the Liberty Market. The night air was heavy with that smell of huang that never falls. His heart sounded like a drum in his chest. The streetlights flickered, and any noise made him look over his shoulder. He turned off the engine and sat still for a moment, breathing slowly. His hands were sweaty. He took the crumpled note, the hospital bracelet, and the small crucifix that Rosa had given him. He looked at them lined up on the passenger seat, as if asking each one for strength. "Sir," he murmured in a trembling voice, "if you really hear me, don't leave me alone today." He got out of the car, adjusted his robe over his shirt, and began to walk. The streets around the market were empty, the metal shutters closed, and the echo of his footsteps mingled with the distant barking of a dog. Was at the back, behind a row of abandoned warehouses. The walls were covered in graffiti and mold. The number painted in faded red was almost erased in the darkness. Inside, a faint light flickered. Gabriel stopped at the entrance. His body wanted to run, but something inside him told him he couldn't. He remembered his sister's voice, broken, saying, "Take care of Mateo," and that was enough. To take the next step, he entered. The sound of the gate closing behind him rumbled like thunder. There was little light, just a lamp hanging from a cable, swaying in the wind that entered through the cracks in the ceiling. The floor was covered with sawdust, smelling of oil, rust, and sweat. In the back, something moved. A small sound, a child's sob. Gabriel's heart raced. Mateo called in a low voice, "Silence." Then a faint, muffled cry, like someone trying to hide. He took 2 slow steps forward, his eyes searching in the darkness. Then he heard a click behind some boxes. "Stay there, doctor," a deep voice said firmly, with the cold tone of someone accustomed to giving orders. From the shadows emerged the man with the scar on his face, the same one from the cameras, the same crooked smile. "Rulo arrived just in time," he said, laughing, to the side. I thought he was going to chicken out. Gabriel didn't move, but fear made his hands tremble. "I just came for the boy." Rulo took a step forward, his heavy boots crunching in the sawdust. He was carrying a flashlight in his hand, and the beam of light rose to the doctor's face. "How brave. A doctor alone and unarmed in my house. I don't want any trouble. I just want to take the boy away." Rulo laughed a dry laugh that bounced off the empty space. "Always the same. Everyone says the same thing before the trouble starts." Gabriel moved forward a little, looking around, trying to locate where the crying was coming from. "Listen to me, please. I don't care what you want. Money, information, just the child." The man frowned, the scar pulling his lip. "Money? No, what I want is what you know. What am I supposed to know?" Gabriel's voice faltered. Rulo raised the flashlight to his chin, smiling. "Don't play games." The woman pointed with her chin to the floor, as if her body were still there. "She left you something. A clue, and I want it." Gabriel swallowed hard. "She didn't leave me anything." "You're lying," Rulo replied simply, coldly. "Everyone who dies leaves something behind, and she left more than you think." A new sob came from the back. Gabriel turned quickly, following the sound. "Where's the child?" Rulo looked back and snapped his fingers. A thin, dirty man with a gun under his coat emerged from the shadows, pushing a small figure, a boy with dark hair, big eyes, and a face dirty with tears. Gabriel felt the floor disappear. Mateo, the boy, was trembling, hugging an armless doll. He looked at him with fear, but with a glimmer of hope. "You see him, Dr. Rulo?" He laughed. "He's alive for now." Gabriel took a step forward, his eyes fixed on the boy. "Let him go, please. He has nothing to do with this." "Of course he does," Rulo replied slowly. "He's the reason you came." Silence returned. The air was heavy. Rulo approached, almost brushing his face. The smell of cigarettes. "Please, he has nothing to do with this." "Of course he does," Rulo replied slowly. "He's the reason you came." Silence returned. The air was heavy. Rulo approached, almost brushing his face. The smell of cigarettes and sweat made Gabriel close his eyes for a second. "Give me what you know," he said, almost kindly, "and he'll go with the boy." Gabriel looked him in the eyes, searching for truth, but the scar moved with the smile, and that smile did not promise life. "I don't have anything," he replied sincerely, his voice trembling. Rulo laughed slowly. "Then pray, doctor. Pray hard." Gabriel felt his legs buckle, his hands empty. He knew he had no chance. He looked at little Mateo with his big, tearful eyes, took a deep breath, lowered his head, and murmured, "Our Father, who art in heaven." The sound of his own voice calmed him, even though he was still afraid. Rouleau laughed and shook his head. His head. "Pray here." He turned to his companion. "Listen, even God is afraid to come in here." But Gabriel continued in a low voice, his eyes closed, his heart beating fast. "Deliver us from evil. Amen." Rouleau's laughter echoed loudly, mixed with the sound of rain beginning to fall outside. At that moment, Gabriel opened his eyes and saw that the child was still looking at him, silent, with a strange faith in his eyes, as if even there, in the midst of hell, he believed that God had not abandoned them. The doctor took a deep breath and stepped forward, his gaze steady. "If I have to stay here for him to come out, I'll stay." Rouleau's smile disappeared for a second. The shed fell silent. All that could be heard was the wind hitting the metal sheets and the distant sound of raindrops falling to the ground. Gabriel's heart was beating fast, but he did not back down. He was armed. Armed, yes, but there was something inside him stronger than any weapon, the faith of a man who had already lost everything and would not let what was left die. He looked at the child, and in a whisper, almost without a voice, he promised, "I won't leave you, Matteo. I swear." And it was at that moment that the metallic sound of a door opening in the distance broke the silence, as if fate were holding its breath, waiting for the next step. The sound had first like distant thunder, a buzzing sound that grew rapidly, filling the heavy air of the warehouse. Long sirens cut through the night, mingling with the sound of rain outside. The echo invaded the metal walls and made everyone turn around at the same time. Rouleau opened his eyes and took the gun out of his coat. "Shit!" he shouted. "Who brought them?" Gabriel stood still, his heart beating in his neck. He hadn't called anyone, but somewhere a part of him knew. Lupita. It could only be her. The sound was getting closer. The sirens multiplied, then a sharp noise. Doors breaking, windows shattering, boots stomping, police on the ground. Commander Herrera's deep voice boomed like thunder. Everything happened fast. Screams, shots at the ceiling, the flash of flashlights cutting through the darkness. Gabriel instinctively ducked, covering his head with his arms. Arms. The smell of gunpowder and rust filled the air. Rouleau tried to escape through the back, but tripped over some boxes. The second man, frightened, let go of the child and raised his hands. Matteo stayed there, small and cowering in the shadows, his cries lost in the chaos. "Grab him!" Herrera shouted. Two police officers ran and pinned Rouleau to the ground. The handcuffs clicked. The man kicked and cursed, the scar on his face red with rage. Gabriel was still shaking. The sound of footsteps, the voices shouting orders. Everything spun around until he heard that child sob again. He turned his face, and there he was, Matteo, cowering with big, frightened eyes, his body dirty and wet. Gabriel looked at him as if time had stopped. No noise, no shouting, just that child. Matteo called him with a trembling voice. "It's me. It's Gabriel." The child hesitated, his eyes trembling, his chest rising and falling rapidly. Then, in a sudden movement, he ran, running between the boxes, stumbling until he bumped into Gabriel's legs. He clung tightly, his face pressed against the wet coat, sobbing loudly. "Uncle," he cried between sobs. "I thought you weren't coming." Gabriel fell to his knees, his hands trembling as he touched the boy's wet hair. "I'm here, my boy," he said in a broken voice. "I'm here." Matteo hugged him so tightly that he seemed afraid he would disappear. Gabriel wrapped his arms around him and pressed his forehead against the boy's. He could feel the boy's heart beating fast, just like his own. The sounds around them began to fade away. The sirens, the screams, the noise of metal. Nothing else existed but that embrace. Herrera approached. "Dr. Ortega, is he okay?" Gabriel lifted his face. Tears mixed with the rain. "He's alive, Commander." He swallowed. "He's alive." Herrera nodded with the look of someone who has seen a lot, but still gets emotional when he sees life instead of death. "Good work, Doctor. Your friend, the nurse, warned us in time." Gabriel held the child closer to his chest. "She saved his life." Matteo moved away just enough to see his face. His cheeks were eyes full of tears and confidence. "Uncle, where's my mom?" he asked quietly. Gabriel closed his eyes for a moment. His chest hurt. He didn't say anything. He just hugged him again, tighter. I promise I won't leave you alone, Matteo. The boy rested his face on his shoulder, sobbing, while outside the red and blue lights of the patrol cars flashed in the darkness. The rain was now falling hard, washing the ground, the marks, the blood. Warehouse 12, which had previously smelled of fear, now smelled of relief. Herrera placed his hand on Gabriel's shoulder respectfully. Take him home, doctor. We'll take care of the rest. Gabriela felt unable to speak. She carried the child in her arms, feeling his light, tired body pressed against her chest. She walked slowly out, accompanied by the sound of sirens and the police moving around. The cold wind hit her face, and for the first time in a long time, she cried without hiding. Matteo continued to hug him, his face buried in his neck, repeating softly, "Uncle, thank you for coming." Gabriel took a deep breath, looked up at the cloudy sky, and replied in a soft voice, "I will always come for you, Matteo," and walked away in the rain, feeling the weight of the promise and the certainty that in that little hug, life had won for the second time. The next day dawned gray, the smell of rain still in the air, and the hospital seemed quieter than ever. Gabriel arrived early, his body tired and his mind aching. The previous night was still inside him. Matteo's crying, the face of his dead sister, the hug that seemed to put back together what life had broken. But now, something was troubling him. All of this couldn't have been the work of one man. Camila hadn't fallen into that hell by accident. Someone had planned it. Someone had allowed it. And he needed to know who. Lupita was waiting for him in the hallway with a folder pressed against her chest. "Doctor, the police have already left, but they left this." She handed him a sheet of paper with Commander Herrera's signature. "They say they found some old papers in the storerooms, but you should see this first." Gabriel took the paper and read it slowly. They were records of newborns' movements, old dates stamped blurred amid the confusion. One name caught his attention: El Paso County General Hospital, 1983, the date of his birth. His heart raced. "Lupita, where do they keep the old hospital records?" he asked in a low, urgent voice. She hesitated. "In the old storage room, doctor. In the basement that almost no one uses, but it's full of dust and rats. Take me there." Her tone left no room for doubt. They went down the narrow stairs together, the sound of their boots echoing off the damp walls. The smell of mold and old paper filled the place. The light flickered, illuminating parts of the hallway and leaving the rest in shadow. The storage room was a labyrinth of rusty shelves, stacked boxes, open folders. Lupita turned on a flashlight. "Almost no one comes in here anymore," she said, coughing from the dust. Gabriel walked slowly, his eyes scanning every corner, every detail. It was then that something caught his attention: a crooked picture on the back wall, an old portrait of doctors and nurses posing in front of the hospital. He approached it, ran his hand over the dust-covered frame, and noticed that something behind it sounded hollow. He tapped it with his knuckles. The sound was different, empty. "Lupita, bring me a spatula." She obeyed, returning with a rusty tool. Gabriel used it to pry a corner of the wall, and the plaster fell away in pieces. Behind the picture was a small, hidden iron door, locked with an old padlock. Lupita looked scared. "Doctor, what is that?" "I don't know, but someone didn't want us to see it." With a sharp blow of the hammer, the padlock broke. The door creaked as it opened, revealing a narrow, dark compartment inside. Several file folders tied with string and covered in dust. Gabriel took one out. The labels were faded, but still legible. Births 1980 to 1985. He opened it carefully. What he saw made his blood run cold. False records, altered certificates, changed names, repeated stamps on many pages, the same signatures of doctors and a nurse he recognized. Maria Estela G. Lupita covered her mouth. "It can't be." Gabriel leafed through the pages with trembling hands. The dates. They matched his mother's delivery. Documents from the same day. Elena Ortega, double delivery. And just below, an ugly stain. The girl's name changed to deceased. "Here it is," he whispered, almost without a voice. "This is where it all began." Lupita approached, her face pale. "Doctor, What does this mean? He looked up, his eyes filled with tears. It wasn't a mistake, Lupita. It was a network. A whole group of doctors, nurses, administrators. They sold children, changed papers, invented deaths. Lupita took a step back, her heart beating fast. My God. Gabriel continued to flip through each page. It was like a stab in the heart. Nameless babies, deceived mothers, identical stamps, 20, 30, 40 cases, and on several sheets, the same small symbol in the corner, a crescent-shaped mark. He leaned his hand against the cold wall to keep from falling. It was a network, and they used the same hospital where I was born. Lupita cried silently, not knowing what to say. Gabriel closed his eyes, trying to contain his rage, guilt, and sadness. They stole lives, erased entire histories. He took his mother's document and hugged it to his chest. My sister was one of them. His voice broke. Lupita approached and put her hand on his shoulder. But you found her, doctor. You broke that silence. He took a deep breath, still looking at that hole in the wall, that hiding place for sins. No, Lupita. His voice was low but firm. This doesn't end here. He closed the folder with force. His hands were dirty with dust and old ink, but his gaze was different now. He knew who had stolen it. He knew how the past had been hidden. And as he climbed the stairs with his mother's document clutched to his chest, he felt the weight of all those children who never had a name or a chance, and the silent oath that none would be forgotten again, because behind that wall, the past had been trapped for decades. But that morning, the truth was finally breathing. The hospital was almost empty that night. The lights were dim, the hallway silent, the distant sound of a respirator filling the air at the end of the hallway. The small chapel, simple, with wooden benches and the smell of burning candles. Gabriel entered slowly, carrying a lit candle in his hands. His face was tired, his eyes red, the flame flickering as if it too were breathing. On the altar was a hastily printed photo, the only image they had of Camila, a portrait with a peaceful face taken from the hospital archives. There was no body, no coffin, but there was a name, and sometimes that is all one needs to begin to heal. He placed the candle next to the photo, took a deep breath, and stared at the flame. The flame danced softly, reflecting in his eyes. Gabriel said in a hoarse voice, "That's your name, sister, and no one will ever take it away from you." The door opened behind him. Slow footsteps sounded on the floor. It was Elena, the aging mother, tired but steady. In her hands she carried the necklace, the same one he had found at the autopsy, now complete, the two pieces joined together again, forming a heart. She approached, her gaze fixed on the photo. She remained silent for a moment, breathing deeply, as if gathering the courage to face a very old pain. Then she placed the necklace at the base of the candle. The metal sparkled with the reflection of the flame. "I always knew he hadn't completely left," she murmured with a trembling voice. "I felt him here." She brought her hand to her chest. Gabriel looked at her with eyes full of tears. "I know, Mom. You were never wrong." She took a deep breath, and without saying another word, took her son's hand. His fingers were cold and fragile, but his touch was firm. They stood there, holding hands in front of the photo, the silence saying everything that words could not. After a while, Gabriel knelt in front of the candle. The sound of the air conditioner seemed like wind from a distant field. He closed his eyes, let his body relax, and with a broken voice he whispered, "I'm sorry for being late, sister." Those words came out like knives. His chest hurt, as if each letter were a cut. Elena looked down and put her hand on her son's head with a mother's gesture that needed no words. "You weren't late, son. You arrived when God wanted you to." Her voice was low, but full of certainty. Gabriel cried without hiding. The tears fell on the cold floor, shining in the candlelight. The flame trembled more strongly, as if responding. "I should have found you sooner," he murmured, clutching the necklace. "So many years, and you were so close." Elena hugged him by the shoulders. "There is no sooner, my son. There is now, and now she rests." They remained like that, embracing, with time standing still around them. Only the soft sound of the candles, the smell of hot wax, and the slight weight of relief that begins to emerge when the heart accepts the truth. Gabriel lifted his face and looked at the photo. His sister's eyes in the picture looked peaceful. Perhaps, he thought, she had already forgiven him. He took the complete necklace and placed it next to the candle. The metal touched the heat of the flame and sparkled. They were one again. Elena put her arm around his. "It hurts, son, but it also heals." He felt her wiping his face. "Yes, it heals." And there they remained, mother and son, in front of a candle, a photo, and a name that time could not erase. There was no music, no father speaking. It was a silent wake, but one full of presence. A wake without a body, but with a soul. And as the flame continued to dance on the small altar, it seemed to say what they both felt, and still did not know how to put into words. She was gone, but the love remained. The prosecutor's office had smooth, cold walls. The air smelled of stale coffee and wet paper from stamps. Gabriel sat in a hard chair with his hands clasped, looking at his fingernails, trying to control his breathing. Elena, next to him, hugged the bag to her chest as if hugging a heart. Matteo was in a smaller chair with his feet dangling without touching the floor. He clutched his armless doll, watching everything with quiet fear. The door opened. A woman in a gray suit and thin glasses entered with a thick folder. Her badge gleamed at her waist. She placed the papers on the table and took a deep breath before speaking. "Mr. Ortega, Mrs. Elena." Her voice was firm but humane. "We have completed the analysis." Gabriel swallowed, and then the prosecutor laughed. She took 2 sheets of paper out of the folder. "The tests leave no doubt. Identical twins, same genetic makeup, same birthmarks." She looked up. Ah, the network. They used fake certificates, repeated stamps, and 3 fixed names. 2 doctors and a nurse signed the changes. "We already have orders. They were arrested today." Gabriel's body relaxed in a strange way, as if he were about to fall. Identical twins. Finally, a phrase that did fit in his life. Elena put her hand to her mouth and closed her eyes for a moment. A tear fell silently down her cheek. Her shoulder trembled, then calmed down. When she opened her eyes, she looked at the prosecutor and spoke softly. "So I wasn't crazy?" "No, ma'am," replied the prosecutor respectfully. "You were right from the first day." The clock on the wall ticked. The sound seemed very loud for such a small room, and Gabriel pointed without being able to say a word. "Child," he said carefully. "Matteo." The prosecutor opened another folder with colored sheets. "We already looked for the origin. His registered mother is Camila Ortega. There is no father on the document. We have records of school, vaccinations, food. She kept him protected." The prosecutor took a deeper breath. "With what we have gathered, Mrs. Camila is recognized as a victim of the same network, and the child as a direct dependent." She lowered her voice as if speaking inside a church. "The state can offer temporary shelter." Or she looked at Elena, then at Gabriel. "There may be family custody if there is someone to take him in." The silence lingered. Matteo raised his face as if expecting a no. Between his fingers, the doll's fabric made a dry little noise. Elena slowly turned her body toward the child. Her voice came out simple and clear, like a grandmother's when she calls for dinner. "Stay with us, my child." Matteo blinked as if he didn't understand. His eyes shone in a way that really hurt Gabriel. "Really?" whispered the child, without letting go of the doll. Elena smiled through her tears. "Really? Your mom?" Her voice broke. She took a deep breath. "Your mom took care of you until the very last day. Now we'll take care of you." Gabriel looked at the child's face and saw the same fear he had seen yesterday in the warehouse, but now with a ray of sunshine inside. He took a deep breath, placed his hands on the table to steady his voice, and said clearly, without any hesitation, "Yes, you have a home here." Matteo bit his lip, his throat making a small sound like stifled laughter. He looked at the prosecutor, then at Gabriel and asked, "Can I sleep with the door open?" Gabriel smiled crookedly, his eyes burning. "Whatever you want, with the light on, with the door open, with my jacket hanging on the chair, whatever gives you peace." The prosecutor nodded in agreement and began to write. "We're going to expedite this due to the seriousness of the case and the blood relationship. Provisional custody will be granted today." She lifted a brown envelope. "These are the documents, reports, Photos from the hidden folders, signatures, Elena's double birth record, and the warehouse report. The whole network is down. Elena took the envelope with trembling hands, and for a moment held it to her chest as if cradling a child. For so many years, she waited to hear the truth by name. The prosecutor closed the folder, stood up, and extended her hand. Thank you for not giving up. If it weren't for you breaking down that wall and the nurse you called, many mothers would still be without answers. It wasn't just us, he said firmly. It was her, Camila. She pushed the door from the inside. The prosecutor looked at him and nodded as if she understood things that weren't in the file. Go home. The rest is our job. They walked out into the hallway together. It was late afternoon. The sun was streaming through the windows, drawing lines of light on the waxed floor. Mateo walked down the middle, stepping only where there was light, playing at not touching the shadows. Elena laughed softly at the mischief, that simple childish way of bringing back the air in the lobby. Gabriel stood next to the boy, put his jacket on his shoulders and asked, "Are you hungry?" "A little," he said shyly. "Then let's do this," Gabriel said. "Today, we'll eat at home, all together, and you get to choose the food. Can I order eggs with tortillas?" He spoke quickly, put his jacket on his shoulders and asked, "Are you hungry?" "A little," he said shyly. "Then let's do this," said Gabriel. "Today we'll all eat at home together, and you can choose the food. Can I have eggs with tortillas?" He spoke quickly, afraid of asking for too much. "You can have 2 or 3, Elena laughed. "And dessert." Mateo smiled so hard that tears came out. He picked up his armless doll. "He wants some too, so he can eat too," Gabriel replied, seriously. As if signing a contract, the assistant prosecutor came with a sheet of paper. "Sign here, please." They signed. Elena took a while to write her name because her hand was shaking. When she finished, she looked at the signature as if she were looking at an old photo. "Done," said the assistant. "You can take the child for anything. Call any time." In the parking lot, the wind was warm, unlike the cold of the previous morning. Mateo stood up suddenly, pulled Gabriel's robe, and asked, "Uncle, if I get scared at night, tell me a story." Gabriel was speechless for a second, then crouched down to his height. "I'll tell you the best one I know, and if you fall asleep in the middle, I'll finish it in a whisper." Mateo rested his forehead on Gabriel's in a gesture that Gabriel had forgotten existed. "Thank you." Elena opened the back door of the car and waited. The boy got in carefully, sat in the middle, and held on to the seatbelt with both hands. Gabriel turned around, but before getting in, he looked up at the sky as if searching for someone above. Camila thought silently, "We'll take care of him, I promise." On the way home, the radio played an old song softly. Elena hummed along without words. Mateo accompanied her, playing the doll, a timid tum-tum that gradually became more confident. Gabriel drove with both hands steady, but his chest light, as if he had finally returned from a faraway place. The city passed by the window without sirens, without haste, just lights from houses, smells of food, a bicycle crossing the street, a curious dog, everything the same as any other day, and at the same time, everything new. As they turned the last corner, Elena spoke with the voice of someone opening doors. "Welcome, my child. This is your home." Gabriel parked, turned off the car, and took a deep breath, like someone arriving from the desert. He opened the door for Mateo, or offered him his hand. The boy got out, looked at the simple facade, and smiled softly, like someone receiving a gift, afraid of losing it. "Here you are. Home," Gabriel repeated, now in a loud voice so that the wall, the gate, and the sky could hear. And this time, the hero did not return alone. He returned with someone small, scared, stubbornly alive, and with a new place in his chest to receive what life gives when it decides to repair. Because some bonds are born of blood, others we choose, and when they meet, they form a family. The wind blew softly, causing the curtain in the room to move. Gabriel sat on the edge of the bed watching Mateo sleep. The child, wrapped in a blue blanket, breathed deeply and calmly for the first time after so many nights of pain and fear. The silence in that house did not hurt. It was a living silence. The dim light from the nightstand illuminated the toys scattered on the floor, the armless doll lying next to the bed, and a pair of tiny shoes forgotten by the door. Gabriel looked at all this and felt a lump in his throat. He ran his hand over his face, trying to hold back the tears. Sometimes life gives you back what it took away, but in a completely new way. He got up slowly and went to the window. His reflection in the glass reminded him of everything: the cold body on the steel table, the strange blood, the scar, the note hidden in the hairpin. Everything had brought him there. Now there was no scalpel, no smell of disinfectant, only the quiet sound of a sleeping child's breathing. He looked at the dark sky and thought of his sister. "I did it, Camila," he whispered. "I don't know if I did everything right, but I tried." A ray of light from the street entered through the window and drew half of his face, her eyes filled with tears but calm. Elena, the mother, appeared in the doorway with a tired smile. "Aren't you sleeping?" "I can't," he replied softly, without taking his eyes off the child. "Look at him. He looks like an angel." She approached him and put her hand on his shoulder. "He is. God sent him to us." They stood there side by side, watching the little one sleep. For a moment, there was no guilt, no fear, no heavy past, only the present, and in him, a discreet miracle. Gabriel took a deep breath. He felt his heart beating at a rhythm that was no longer his alone. It was the sound of something being reborn. At the end of the story, Gabriel decided to keep Mateo with him. What would you do if you were in his place? Would you give the child to his mother's family, or would you want Gabriel to raise him? Write your comments, like the video, and if you want more realistic hospital stories like this, share this video with your loved ones. Before you go, check out the other interesting hospital stories on the screen.